Did in 1865 supposedly, so just because you're paying me a check, you're not paying me enough for my loyalty. So I still root for the Huskies. Sorry about that. Yeah, so since arriving here, I've attempted to make a lot of changes, and there's a lot of people looking over me, make sure I don't get in too much trouble, like Mrs. Tawanda Kitchen and Dr. Janelle Pitt. They look over me and make sure I don't get in too much trouble because, as you can tell, I do not have much of a filter.
Thank you all. So before we get into it, I want to offer anybody water. Anybody need a water? All the way down. Okay, so I'm going to kind of, anybody else need more water? So the format of it is I'm going to ask each of the panelists a question. They have about 60 seconds to answer, 60 to 2 minutes to answer the question, and then I'm going to bounce it off to the other panelists to answer the same question for sake of time, because we do have another panelist, so just trying to for sake of time. So the first question I have is titled Reclaiming the Black Male Image, and this is for Dr. Raheem. On the historical relevance of black images throughout various genres of media, how can you help black males overcome the psychological assaults that exploit who they are and hinder their social development? And the rest of the panelists, think about that, because you all are going to get an opportunity to speak on that question as well.
I have 60 seconds.
Help me there.
All right. First of all, I want to start off by saying I look at it from a different paradigm than some other people might look at it. First of all, I want to say this. From around about the year 1400 to 1865, our people were enslaved, whether it was here in America or the Caribbean, you were enslaved. Right? Then right after 1865, we were mentally enslaved. Okay? And that lasted all the way probably until 1965. Because the Jim Crow laws lasted that long. Black codes and Jim Crow laws lasted over 100 years, 1865 to 1965. So in actuality, black people are just now becoming free in 1965, because that's when the Civil Rights Act was actually signed, right? And now the U.S. Supreme Court is saying we're going to reverse some of that. So from 1865 to 1965, our image as black men and black women was very stereotypical. And what I mean by stereotypical is not get into the archetypes of the black female, the Jezebel, the Sapphires, the mammy, and the matriarch, but also the black male. We were playing roles of the buffoon, the super Negro, and what I mean by the super magical Negro, you can look at movies where like he was the one that did things for the white people and helped them out, but he was a unit because he wasn't a sexual threat, right? And probably the best movie to describe that would be The Green Mile. Okay. Then you can look at the athlete, the player pimp, and the hustler. And a lot of our people, like me, have adapted and internalized these stereotypical images, right? Now, when you look at the solution, the popular solution, being that I'm a clinical mental health counselor and I'm a counselor educator, so I train people how to be counselors, of course it's going to be obvious. I'm going to say the solution is counseling, because psychologically, we still suffer from post-traumatic slave syndrome, right? So since we're still suffering from post-traumatic slave syndrome, there's a lot of maladaptive behaviors that over generations we'd adapted as normal. So since we adapted these type of behaviors as normal, we internalized them and it became part of our community. That leads to the misfunction, the dysfunction of our relationship as far as with black females. And I'm not talking about just interpersonal relationship as far as romantic. I'm talking about just having a partnership where you can respect a black woman, right? And help that black woman, and the black woman help you. So there's a lot of mistrust, and that's been carried on from slavery through the Jim Crow laws, because a lot of our black women, because of our maladaptive behavior, have a hard time forgiving the black man for not being there to support them and save them from a lot of...
30 seconds.
Okay, but anyway, real quick, in a clip note version, what I would offer is like the psychosocial mental health paradigm. And what that means is you got to look at the emotional health, which is feeling. You got to also look at the spiritual health, which is being. I'm not talking about a particular spirituality or a particular religion, but we are a very spiritual people. Then you also got to look at the social health that's related. That's what I was kind of getting into as far as being able to relate to the black female in a positive and a very proactive way. And I'm not talking about just trying to get with her, I'm talking about actually being a partner, right? And then also the mental health, the way we think. A lot of the way we think is very maladaptive, and we let different media influence the way we think, not only as far as people, but as far as how we relate to each other.
Thank you, Dr. Raheem. Dr. Kim Cole, any thoughts?
Can you run that question
Yes,
by me?
ma'am.
I got lost in the answer.
Okay. On the historical relevance of black images throughout various genres of media, how can we help black males overcome the psychological assaults that exploit who they are and hinder the social development?
I think as a college instructor and a college counselor is how I approach this question, and I think working with people from whatever background, but particularly I think African American students with very deep respect, and listening to stories and narratives, because they're very important and they talk about who they are, who they've become. And part of what we need to do is to be able to help young men who are struggling to not adapt to the mainstream, but we all got to work in the mainstream in one way, shape, form, or another. But to help folks to be able to make that bridge so they can become successful, and then later on having that role, being the role model for their own children.
Thank you. Mr. Charles Cole.
Yeah, I want to make sure I keep it like succinct and whatnot. Like, I do a lot of these panels, and I want to make sure what I really try to do is make sure it applies to the people that's out there, right? Like, I know when we get like a lot of smart people and like on the table, we start like really going in and using big words and stuff, right? Make us feel good. But I want to make sure, and I'm talking about me, right? But I want to make sure that everything I say is applicable to you all that's out there. I think the first thing that you have to do is you have to affirm that brother or that sister, right? Like, I have to affirm you and tell you that you are important and that you matter, first off. I think that needs to happen. Secondly, we need to root you in so you know what your history is and you know where you come from, and not just the bad things that we've done or whatnot, because there are some bad things that we get to see every day, but also where you come from and the strength of that community, right? Like, what's in your roots, what's in your bones, that is flesh of your flesh and blood of your blood. These things are important. Then I have to affirm you again. I have to tell you again that you matter. Regardless of what you just saw on that screen about UCLA, regardless of where you came from, or however you made it to this room, you are in this room right now, and your purpose is you're worthy to be here. You deserve this. Even if you're a high school student and you're not here yet, you deserve to be here, right? And then I think the last thing that you do to kind of really wrap all that up is knowing all that stuff and knowing who you are and where you come from. Still, don't be afraid to be you. There is no false pretense of what it means, like what a black person has to do or how that person has to walk, how they have to talk, how they have to dress. And I think a lot of time, like, there's a lot of things systematically that kind of push us out and make us feel certain types of way and demand this and all that good stuff. But like, even being in the hood and working with my kids, and just when I was a kid myself, because I did this, I'm guilty of this, we push each other out, right? Like, if somebody's doing something different from us, we say, oh, that ain't how black folks do that. Like, if somebody's like in an English class and they're trying to learn how to speak and they sound different from you, we don't affirm that, right? So we push people away, and it just causes dissonance. So I mean, that could be a much larger question, but I wanted to like really kind of put it out there point by point, and hopefully that made sense, right? Like, if you ain't take nothing else from that, like, know that you matter. Let's start there.
Thank you. Ms. Tina Ruffin.
I would just like to reiterate the idea that yeah, we must encourage them to see that they do matter. Like you said, the kids that I work with, they from the west side of Fresno, so you know, all they're socialized to believe is that, hey, you know, just do what you can to get past, and you know, that's pretty much it. They're not given that extra motivation to go further. So a lot of kids, they're getting ready to graduate, and they're looking at me like, you mean to tell me I don't have to settle for Fresno City? And I'm like, no, you know, you do have other options. So I just try to get them to redefine who they are overall. You know, you don't have to fall into the stereotypes that are placed on you. You know, you don't have to just settle for what is placed before you. You know, reach for the stars. Pretty much, I grew up in Oakland, like I said, so I had to go through resiliency programs just because I was African American. It's like, oh, well, you already have a bunch of stereotypes placed on you, so I could relate to, you know, what they go through and the things that they see because, like I said, just because I was black, they figured, oh, well, obviously you come from a rough neighborhood, or obviously one of your parents are alcoholic or, you know, abuse substances or whatever the case may be. So I just pretty much just try to inspire and encourage them to understand that they can do better, and regardless of what they see around them, you know, they can overcome those things.
Thank you. Mr. Byron Harlow?
My main thing is that, you know, the black image in these various types of media forms,